One beautiful truth about God is that His instructions are never cruel and never without purpose. When God calls us to do something, when He nudges our hearts or speaks clearly through His Word, it is always rooted in His perfect love and sovereign wisdom. God does not lead us down paths to harm us, but to shape us, bless us, and use us in ways that often far exceed our understanding. But still, in our flawed human reasoning, we often struggle to trust that. We sometimes wrestle with the idea that our way is better. We convince ourselves that there's an easier path than the one God has chosen for us. And when we resist Him, God, in His boundless mercy, doesn't give up on us. He doesn't abandon the plans He has for us. He doesn't discard the calling He's placed upon our lives. Instead, He sometimes uses the most unexpected means to realign us. That truth is etched into the remarkable story of Jonah as documented in the book of Jonah, chapters 1 through 4. Jonah was a man chosen by God, a prophet entrusted with a powerful mission. Jonah knew what it meant to carry divine instruction. So when God told Jonah to go to the wicked city of Nineveh to deliver a message of warning, Jonah knew the weight of what he was being asked to do. But instead of obeying, he ran away from God's plan. Why? Because Jonah didn't want Nineveh to be saved. He wanted them to experience God's judgment for their wicked ways. Jonah knew that if he warned them and they repented, God, in His mercy, would forgive them. And that thought offended Jonah. Jonah didn't believe a people that evil deserved a second chance. So he chose disobedience. He boarded a ship headed for Tarshish, far from Nineveh and even farther from the will of God. But what Jonah failed to realize is that you can't outrun a God who loves you too much to let you go. As the ship sailed across the sea, a violent storm broke out, a storm not born of nature but sent by the hand of God. The sailors panicked. They cried out to their gods. They cast lots, desperate to discover the cause of the raging winds and crashing waves. The sailors quickly turned on Jonah when they realized the sea had been calm before. But as soon as Jonah stepped on board, a violent storm arose. It became clear to them that the storm wasn't ordinary. It had followed Jonah, and he had brought trouble with him. The terrified sailors confronted Jonah, and Jonah confessed about what he had done. Jonah didn't beg the sailors for mercy or plead to be taken back to shore. Instead, he told them to throw him into the sea. Jonah, in that moment of despair and guilt, thought it was better for him to sink and die into the depths of the sea than face the presence of the one he had tried to escape. Jonah was convinced he had gone too far to be redeemed. But even in that dark resolve, God had already prepared a rescue, not to punish him, but to prove that grace still waited, even at the bottom of the ocean. The sailors reluctantly threw Jonah onto the shore, and the storm calmed immediately. And just when it seemed that Jonah's story would end there, alone and drowning in the depths of his rebellion, God did something no one could have expected. He appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah, not to destroy him, not to punish him, but to preserve him. Inside the belly of the great fish, Jonah finally reached the end of his running, surrounded only by the mercy of God. Jonah could no longer distract himself with movement, no longer avoid God by choosing another destination. In that place of confinement, he was forced to face the very presence he had tried to escape. God had cornered him not out of wrath, but out of relentless love, because Jonah still had a calling, and God still had a plan. The belly of the fish became a place of reckoning, a divine pause where Jonah had to come to terms with his rebellion and what it meant to truly surrender. Jonah spent 3 long days and nights in the belly of that fish, and in that stillness, Jonah finally prayed and cried out to God in repentance. And God, in His mercy, responded to Jonah's cries. The fish finally spat Jonah out onto dry land, which marked the beginning of Jonah's second chance. This time, when the word of the Lord came to him, Jonah went to Nineveh. He walked through the city declaring God's warning, and to his astonishment, everyone, from the king down to the lowest citizen, all turned from their evil ways. And God, just as Jonah suspected, forgave the people of Nineveh for their sins. God's will was ultimately accomplished through a man who first ran away from it. The story of Jonah shows us that about how far we humans can go to escape obedience and how far God will go to bring us back. It's about the uncomfortable ways God uses to get our attention when our hearts grow stubborn. And sometimes, He sends storms. In our lives today, the fish might be a crisis, a season of isolation, a painful pause, or a moment when everything feels like it's falling apart. But often, those are not the signs of God's absence. They are evidence of His intervention. He is not trying to destroy you. He is breaking through your rebellion, silencing your distractions, and inviting you back to the place of obedience and trust. If you've learned something from this video, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Be blessed.